by arguably one of the greatest defenses of all time right now out there on this field to this point of the season. Ultimately we'll have to see how the season ends. But he's out there being obliterated by one of the greatest defenses of all time. And what's the first thing that you hear him say on the sideline? Mic'd up, the most notable comment he says, "I'm seeing ghosts." A lot of people are ripping Sam Darnold for that. No, he shouldn't have said it. But I'm more so focused on the fact that the New York Jets organization even allowed this to happen in the first place.
Right.
There was nobody in that organization who stepped up to the plate and said, maybe we shouldn't do this. Maybe this isn't a good idea. No, choose another game, not this game in particular, because it's Belichick, it's Brady, it's the Patriots, and it's the fact that the Jets are just one of the two franchises in the NFL that Bill Belichick absolutely gets his team up for to go out and stomp a mud hole in, because we know how he feels about the New York Jets and the Cleveland Browns, who they ironically play this week as well, the Cleveland Browns and the New England Patriots.
Right.
I'll be very eager for that matchup to see how bad Baker Mayfield will get embarrassed as well. I'm not sure if it'll be as bad as Sam Darnold, but I do believe it's going to be bad, just simply because these are the games that Belichick gets up for. And the games that Belichick actually gets up for are even more humiliating for the opposing teams as opposed to the games where it is simply just always the do your job mantra. Now, let me get back to the New York Jets organization. This is an organization that in this past spring, Scott, they allowed their general manager to handle their NFL draft, knowing that he would not be the general manager of that franchise going forward. They allowed him to handle that draft. And we see how that's working out right now. But, Scott, right when I wanted to give the Jets the benefit of the doubt, it looked like they were finally turning a new leaf last year when they selected Sam Darnold. Right. It really looked like they were finally turning a new leaf to me. It looked like they were making the right decisions. You have something like that takes place. You have the Mike situation with Sam Darnold that takes place. And I'm not all the way sold in on Adam Gase either. And this is where I want you to include your 2 cents on this as well.
Okay.
Because Adam Gase being the former head coach of the Miami Dolphins, and you watching a lot of Miami Dolphins football and you covering some of the Miami Dolphins football because you are in that area, and you've seen Adam Gase up close and personal and what his coaching style was like in his years in Miami, what exactly sold the New York Jets that Adam Gase was a better person to lead the ship going forward than someone like a Mike McCarthy, or maybe even hiring Greg Williams to come in and run the full defense? And by the way, this has to be noted as well. It has now come out that Adam Gase and Greg Williams do not get along. He did not want to hire Greg Williams, and there is dysfunction on that side of the room as well. I'm not sure how much communication they have, but that report came out earlier this week that there is conflict between Adam Gase and Greg Williams within the New York Jets organization. Now, by you being up close and personal with that Miami Dolphins situation all those years, what can you possibly say sold the New York Jets that Adam Gase was the guy going forward?
Okay, let me go here. If your team with the letters Eds on the back end of it, okay, it's bad. The Mets had a chance to get Joe Girardi, and that didn't work out well because they didn't want a real manager to manage. Bear with me on this, okay? You know where I'm going. Number 2, I don't think you can judge Adam Gase's body of work with the Miami Dolphins to a point I would totally hold it against him because he inherited a quarterback that he did not draft in Ryan Tannehill. So I personally give him the benefit of the doubt there, and he had a track record for what he had done with Peyton Manning before. So I give him a pass in that sense, okay? I really do. But, yeah, there's no doubt that I'm glad that you decided to carry the subject over to today where you have more time to talk about it, okay? But there's been a lot of dysfunction with the Jets for a long time. Greg Williams, first of all, okay, should have been a head coach with the Cleveland Browns, okay, not Freddie Kitchens to begin with. That's where this little insane domino effect takes place. Greg Williams should be in Cleveland. Now, I'm so proud of you for even bringing this up, okay, that you're right. Belichick has it with the Jets. He doesn't like them. I hope the Cleveland Browns get embarrassed 56-0 to the Patriots. This is how I feel, because you're right. It's a Bill Belichick, okay, King Kong tour is what we're looking at. And I really hope the Cleveland Browns get so bad that I wouldn't even mind doing 76 trombone. You know what, Xavier? Don't take this the wrong way. I hope they lose 77-0 like what happened with Savannah State against Miami. Just kidding, brother.
Oh, no. I wholeheartedly agree with you.
Okay, good. Just so you know, not taking shots at the X-Men. Okay, I'm not. But I hope that the New England Patriots, okay, go ahead and beat the Cleveland Browns 77-0, and we've already seen a 33-0 thing. Now, Lewis is chomping at the bit to say something. I'll get back on, but let Lewis go ahead.
Well, I'll defer to Scott first to say. I'll say this to you, Scott. Why are you not referencing the Cumberland Virginia Tech game from like 1916 where they lost 222-0? Look it up. That's the worst game of college football ever played. Anyway, what I'm going to say, Xavier, on the subject, really quick, and I just want your opinion on this. I talked about this with Scott and Mel Farr Jr. earlier. Would you be surprised if Tom Brady plays for another team next season? Because this has been irking me.
Lewis, I have to say this right now. If it was anybody besides Adam Schefter who was coming out here making these rumors and these claims and these reports, I would not believe it. But it's the fact that it's Adam Schefter. And there are three guys at ESPN, the worldwide leader, the alleged worldwide leader, I should say, who, when you take their word for something, it's usually gold. It's Adam Schefter, it's Adrian Wojnarowski, and it's Buster Olney. Right. And when those three guys speak, it's almost like the gospel of the sport that they are reporting on. What I will say is this. In some of Tom Brady's press conferences, there does seem to be some form of unhappiness or something that's just not there like it had been in previous years. And, I'm not exactly sure what the issue could pinpoint to. We have to go back to when the Patriots cut Antonio Brown for more foolishness and more outrageous behavior. Tom Brady actually was not happy about the fact that the Patriots cut Antonio Brown. But it was large due in part to the fact that he did not have a deep threat to throw to. And, you can only imagine right now what else is going on throughout the organization, because let me just say this right now. Mohamed Sanu is a nice addition to the New England Patriots. But you know what Mohamed Sanu is not? He's not a deep threat. And you have N'Keal Harry, who is coming back very soon. He began the season on IR. He's finally eligible to get ready to come back. And I'm excited to see what he's going to do. But they're in the middle of their season, and even though they're undefeated, it's like the Patriots can almost figure out how to work any of these guys in. But you know what you see the Patriots doing on offense more than anything that I pay attention to? They throw a lot of slant routes. You don't see them throw a lot of deep balls. And I don't know if that's because they don't have a true deep threat. Maybe it's because they're trying to preserve Brady a little until later on in the season, because he is 42 years old, and he does have many moments out there on the field where he does look 42 years old. But here's what I will say to you, Lewis. I could see Tennessee. I could potentially see Chicago, one of those two teams that need a quarterback. And by Tom Brady having the great respect that he has for Matt Nagy as a play caller, Mike Vrabel being a former teammate of his, yeah, I could see a possibility where he could end up leaving New England and going to one of those teams. I could even see a possibility where he may end up with the Los Angeles Chargers, because Phillip Rivers has simply not been able to get the job done this year or any other year, and they're already having enough trouble as it is selling tickets and getting fans into the seats. Tom Brady would at least be able to do that for you, even though you are the stepchild NFL organization of that city to the Rams anyway. At least Tom Brady would bring some form of mystique, and he's interesting. But, it's something that we're going to have to watch play out. But the more Adam Schefter continues to report on this, because he reported on this earlier in the week, and he came back and he said something on ESPN again this morning. I believe that this is going to start to pick up more steam, and we're going to see how much more real it is. Because Brady does look like he is fed up with some of the things that are going on.
Okay, Lewis has one more thing, and I want to get back in on the Jets conversation. Go ahead, Lewis.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of, this is an odd comparison, and Scott doesn't always like when I mention other sports, but, you know, the idea of having Brady, and the other teams that you mentioned make a lot of sense given the prior relationships that Brady has with them, but the idea of Brady going to L.A., playing for the Chargers to replace Rivers as a mere means of selling tickets is like the idea of when Babe Ruth, who the Yankees thought were at the end of his career after the 1934 season, it was like him signing with the Boston Braves when they knew he wasn't going to really do much. Just because, you know, given his age and the deterioration of his skill. I mean, that's all I really have to add to that. Again, I would just be horrified and just kind of let down to see him play in another uniform.
All right, and I'm only going to say this, okay, and I do want to get back on track here, okay? All right, number one, the only two teams I would have thought it might be Denver or Tampa Bay as destinations too, but I want to get off of that because we've talked about that a lot, and I want to stay back on track with the Jets. They're an absolute mess. Greg Williams, and I'm going to go back to my point, should have been the Cleveland Browns coach. The Jets have been dysfunctional for a while. Think about it. They hired Rex Ryan, and they brought in Tim Tebow to run the Wildcat. And the fact that they haven't been to a Super Bowl since Joe Namath. And not that the Lions have been any better. In fact, they've been worse. But when you talk about the whole organization, the way it's run, you know, to me, you know, you had Ken O'Brien over Dan Marino many years ago. Not that Ken was a bad quarterback, but there's a history of dysfunction and toxic nature that, you know, and then unfortunately Sam Darnold is brought on as a savior. So what happened on Monday night was unfortunate. Sam Darnold just got his butt kicked by a much better team. And yes, Belichick has an in for the Jets, and he does have it in for the Browns. I mean, that's just a given. It really is. And you know what? He'll run it up all day long against these teams. He doesn't really, frankly, care. Now, let me add something else to what you guys have talked about, okay, about the Brady thing. And I mentioned this to Farr, and I'm going to mention it to both of you guys. I think I've said enough about the Jets that Sam Darnold was in an unfortunate situation. I don't think a microphone should have been on this kid on a nationally televised game against the Patriots in, his second year into this thing. I think a microphone, unless the ESPN was behind it, and they're lagging in ratings and interest to market a game which they figured was an absolute rout in the first place. That, to me, is the only ghosts that were in there actually came from the higher-ups at ESPN for coming up with such a stupid idea to begin with. But I think Sam Darnold will be a good quarterback. I really do. I really believe that. I think that's one of the better moves that the Jets have made. I'm not so sure that I'm bothered as much about the Adam Gase thing. I'm really not, as much as a lot of people are. I'm not ready to really throw that one in. Greg Williams, unfortunately, what can I say about him? If he doesn't stay with the Jets, he'll land someplace else. I do have a problem with organizations telling certain coaches they have to keep this assistant. That I do have a problem, because then you're talking about puppet territory. Do you know what I mean? I've got a problem with that. Now, let's keep this all on track. The one thing I can tell you about the Patriots-Brady situation, and I know we're dancing around in lots of different areas, but Xavier, you tend to bring up excellent topics where we can go in different directions, and that's okay. But the reality is with Belichick and Brady, it's like, who can win one without the other? It's about egos bigger than Mount Everest or McKinley or whatever you've got, Kilimanjaro. That's about ego, man. I don't care what it is. Who can win more than the other? And you know what? Greg Popovich doesn't have this ego when he had to, when Tim Duncan played with Popovich. They love each other. These two here obviously are going down in history as arguably the best quarterback coach duel, whether they like it or not. But I'll tell you what, you being a baseball guy, you're right. When you overdo it with stats, I have no problem. But there's a fine line between stats and logic, because what you have to understand that Ty Cobb may have played the most of his career with the Tigers, but it's not uncommon. And Ernie Harwell told me this, for other guys to end up in other uniforms. And I'm not knocking you because you have a great knowledge of this area, but it's not uncommon for superstars Xavier, you can appreciate this, right? To end up someplace else. That's just the way pro sports are. More so in this day and era. You don't have guys